I guess the honeymoon's over. I want to talk about sailing in Old School RuneScape, but not as a review and not as a reaction to the latest poll that you may be aware of, although we'll mention it. This is more about how sailing fit into my life, what it gave to me, and why I feel so strangely conflicted about it now that it's here. Because sailing mattered to me long before it was a skill that you could train in the game. When I first saw the early trailer advertising the lock-in poll for sailing, I wasn't even really playing RuneScape a whole lot at that point. I was an avid player. I logged in once in a while, did a bit of skilling, logged out. My stats were bad. I don't think that I was even base 60 at the time. Some skills were probably in the 30s. But I remember seeing the trailer and thinking, that looks unbelievable. That looks so cool. That looks like the coolest thing I've seen in a video game ever. I was sucked back in to the world of Gielinor, not in a way that was like that looks efficient, or that'll be good XP, just cool, adventurous, different. And that single trailer pulled me back in to RuneScape in a way that I've never been pulled in before. I told myself, okay, if sailing's coming out, I want to be ready for it. I don't want to log in on a release date and realize I'm locked out of half the content because I skipped quests or ignored progression in other ways. I want full access, no restrictions, and I didn't want to have any excuses to make about having restrictions. So I started doing some quests. And then something kind of clicked for me. RuneScape quests aren't just chores, they're stories. They're funny, emotional, sometimes ridiculous, sometimes surprisingly heavy. And the more quests I did, the more I realized how much life there is in this game. At first my goal was simple: finish the quests that might matter in sailing. Then it became finish all quests. And then eventually it turned into, I'm doing this anyway, I may as well max my account before sailing comes out. And then that became my real goal. And I don't mean casually. I was playing daily for hours. Some days, way too many hours. I wasn't really playing other video games. RuneScape became the thing I orientated my time around. And I know that sounds unhealthy. And yeah, it probably was. You're playing one video game for 16 hours a day. Yeah, there might be something a little bit unhealthy about that. But also gave me something I really needed at the time. I was going through a pretty rough period at work. I didn't feel particularly valuable. I didn't feel like I had a meaningful place in the world, and RuneScape gave me a space where effort mattered, where progress was visible, where goals were clear. And in that world, I wasn't just some guy struggling through his days. I was an adventurer. I was doing important things. Quests, every XP drop, every item upgrade was building towards something tangible. Sailing wasn't just a skill, it was the destination. So when sailing finally released, I had completed every quest, I had maxed my account, I had structured months of my time around being prepared for this moment, and then I maxed sailing in 2 weeks. And that feels strange to say. I trained sailing mostly through the shipwreck salvaging, and I mixed in port tasks. I did the Barracuda trials for the uniques. I tried a bit of everything except for deep sea trawling, which is actually a skill I do want to visit at some point. But I just haven't had the drive to build a dedicated ship for deep sea fishing trawling. I upgraded ships. I even went deep into shipwreck salvaging, trying to get the dragon candlebearers for myself when they were worth a small fortune. I made it to 60 million sailing XP before I gave up without seeing a single one. And somewhere along the way, I realized something uncomfortable. I wasn't really enjoying myself anymore. It bothered me more than I expected because the journey back into RuneScape had been incredible. The best gaming experiences I've had in years, if not ever. But the thing it was all building toward felt over abruptly. 2 weeks. And that was it. And part of that was on me. I rushed, I optimized, I chased efficiency. But a huge part was the way certain systems shipped and how sailing was experienced at launch. And the crystal extractor, goddamn stupid crystal extractor. From what we understand, the crystal extractor was a last-minute addition and was not tested adequately. What is 500 times 60? It's hard math. And it changed the entire vibe of the skill for me. Not just using the crystal extractor, but the after effect and the fact that the damage had been done. You could activate it once a minute for 500 XP. You didn't have to move, you didn't have to actually sail, you could sit still and farm experience while doing other sailing activities. And what it did is it generated a wind mote, which honestly just generating the wind mote, which makes you move faster for a certain amount of time, that would have been enough. It didn't need to give you any XP. But it did. Instead of asking, what do I want to do in sailing today? I was asking, what do I need to do before they fix this? And it became a compulsive, not engaging optimization pressure, which I suppose is a me problem. I had to click it every minute I was shipwreck salvaging. I had to click it, gotta get that 500 XP, get that chance of a crystal shard, clicking it over and over and over and over. And even after it was nerfed, given that it was actually nerfed the morning of my last day of the grind, the damage to my first impressions was already done. First impressions are important, folks. My entire path to 99 was shaped by an AFK system that was way too AFK, and a loophole that was not part of being a cool, fancy fantasy sailor. I was just clicking the thing in between shipwreck salvaging. And that's frustrating because sailing itself isn't bad. In fact, it's quite good. Boat movement feels genuinely great. Being on the open ocean feels different from moving around on land in a way that actually works. It doesn't feel like a modded minigame bolted into RuneScape or something you would see in a private server with tons of wacky mods. It feels like it belongs in the world of Old School RuneScape. It feels like this was something that belonged in Gillinor the whole time. The Barracuda trials were genuinely fun content. I enjoyed them a lot. They just didn't feel repeatable for me. I did them to unlock the unique rewards. I felt accomplished, and I was ready to move on. Farming them reminded me too much of content like the Hollowed Sepulchre. Well designed is not something I personally want to repeat endlessly. Where sailing really starts to fall apart for me is in its supporting systems, especially combat. Honestly, I don't think sailing combat should have been shipped at all. At least not in its current state. Good God. You park your boat, you assign NPCs to cannons, you swivel your boat back and forth while the enemy stands still, so your characters can both hit them with your cannons, and you hit them with your best ranged or magic gear, and you watch your cannonballs just disappear into the ocean. And they're expensive, they're not cheap. And try to get one of the jackpot drops that these guys, like the Krakens, drop. And it doesn't feel like combat, it feels like you're fighting the interface, like you're doing something the system technically allows but never really wanted you to do. The delivery missions have a similar issue. They're point-to-point tasks, no danger, no meaningful choice, no risk, no alternate routes. You're basically a water-based skip the dishes driver, and the pay is probably worse. And when balance changes did happen, especially around shipwreck salvaging, it felt like there was a lack of confidence. Changes were made, and to the crystal extractor, thank gosh, that immediately revised. Like, they didn't even wait for the next Wednesday. They didn't wait for the next update day. They just went back on it like the next day. And it gave me the impression that the foundation is strong, but the direction was never settled. Which maybe that just makes sense for Old School. But then they released the opinion poll. I'm not going to go over the whole poll. There was one question that really kicked me in the nards, okay? And I saw the question about whether or not there should be another skill added to RuneScape. And it didn't make me angry. It definitely made me pause. And how I answered it is at odds with how I felt about it. Because sailing feels like it's facing an identity crisis right now. And they're asking us, hey, should we add another skill into this game after sailing someday? Like, why are you asking me this now, man? Sailing has such a long way to go. It really does. It feels like it's an early access skill, a foundation with enormous potential, but not yet a clear purpose beyond existing within itself. And asking about another skill while this one still feels so unfinished feels premature. And despite all of this, I want to be very clear about one thing. I'm glad sailing exists. I'm really glad sailing exists. I'm glad Old School RuneScape got a new skill, and I'm glad they took the risk. I don't think sailing was a mistake. I just think it released in a state where the system was ahead of the content. If sailing goes anywhere from here, I would love to see it lean hard into exploration, bigger ships, open oceans, dangerous routes during port tasks. Maybe you're getting hunted down by pirates that want the deliveries you're making. Unknown spaces. The Eastern Sea. Let sailing be about discovery and scale, not swiveling in place for XP. 2 years from now, sailing could be incredible. Right now, it feels like the beginning of a story, not the finished version. And I think that's why I feel the way I do about it. I would love to see it grow. I will look forward to seeing it grow. This is my favorite video game of all time, and getting to watch it grow is truly the coolest thing I could ever really experience as a gamer. And because of that, I voted yes. I would love to see another skill added to RuneScape in the future, possibly against better judgment. Thanks for listening to me ramble for a little bit about my favorite video game of all time and the most mixed I've been on it in the entire time I've ever played it. Let me know what you think about sailing yourselves in the comments. If you haven't played RuneScape, does sailing convince you that you'd want to give it a go? If you're not pushing yourself every single day, you're not gonna max it in 2 weeks. That was just a me thing, and I think I was in the top 2,200 players that remaxed their account first. So it's not like it's common, but yeah. I hope you enjoyed, everybody. I'll see you around.